g'day, mate. There has been a lot of talk, a lot of spin, a lot of outright lies in the general hope that the noise that has come out of Canberra in the past 24 hours somehow means your life got better. Now, I understand that when we talk about tax rates, unless it affects you, it kind of sounds like this, as simplified by The Simpsons when talking about the difference between the person who wants a pay rise and the person who won't pay for the pay rise.
We have a very tight budget. To do what she's asking, we'd have to raise taxes.
Raise too high as they are. Taxes.
It's your children's future.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Children are important. It's good. Yes.
It'll cost you.
Oh, the taxes. It's not. You're going to raise taxes.
Come on.
She makes that's a good point. It's good. Yes. Oh, yeah, the taxes. The finger thing means the taxes.
So I understand, after months and months and months of stage 3 tax cuts, you might feel a little bit like that you read something and keeping them's the best thing in the world and getting rid of them's the best thing in the world and best thing since sliced bread. And then there is, of course, just one term that has just been drilled into all of our heads as a way of just at times exhausting and confusing and getting us ready for today. And as I said, just like the Simpsons arguments about this and come on, at some point in time, people sort of tuned out when all they've heard for months is this.
Stage 3 tax cuts.
The stage 3 tax cuts.
Stage 3 tax cuts.
Stage 3 tax cuts.
Stage 3 tax cuts.
So I understand. But bear with me because there is so much spin and so much selective accounting around all of this that I need to talk to you about tonight. Because front and centre, the government is obviously not trying to help its own life, your life, it's trying to help its own life. It's trying to win back in the polls and then guarantee its future to an election earlier this year or maybe one next year. That's always what governments do. So regardless of whether it's a government you like or you don't like, that's always generally the motivation. They don't do an awful lot for us, no matter what they happen to say. Now, before we get into the detail here, and I'm not going to bore you too much with too much detail, let's not forget where we started. Under this government, under this Prime Minister and this Treasurer, on the 1st of July in 2023, a long time after they had become the government, the law kicked in that the $1,500 automatic tax return that 10 million workers got was discontinued. Now, Labor will say, well, this was the policy of both parties at the last election. And as you saw in my conversation with Scott Morrison last night, as soon as this decision was coming up in 2023, I would have spent every night of every show lobbying for it to be changed, and obviously we would have had a more sympathetic ear in the former government than the current government. Instead, the current government basically was able to move billions of dollars around by getting rid of $1,500 for 10 million workers. So that's where we start. So tomorrow, when you read in the paper about how much you're getting back and how much the stage 3 tax cuts makes it so much better for you or so much worse for you, think about that. The low to middle income workers who are already, as a result of this government, $1,500 worse off. Compare that to what they're going to give you, which, remember, is your own money anyway. And these words today are probably going to ring fairly hollow.
This could be the sliding doors moment for Anthony Albanese's prime ministership.
A decision to reconnect with a vital group.
Really concentrating on Middle Australia.
Redirecting the stage 3 tax cuts from the wealthy to that middle.
Average earners will have their tax cut almost doubled under a new plan.
It's expected low and middle income earners will be better off under the revised model.
Now, the actual numbers we will all find out tomorrow when the Prime Minister turns up at the press club. Remember what I said last night? It was all about trying to build day after day after day of attention, meaning that he's back in charge of the cycle. But once people actually realise how little has changed, I reckon the Prime Minister's going to end up back in a world of pain. Now, we'll have to wait a while because the media, like you just saw there, sliding doors moment for the Prime Minister, are viewing this exclusively in terms of Canberra. We view this in terms of you. Now, there's lots of tables and charts and everyone will tell you how much and who and all the rest. I'll try and make it as simple as possible. People over at the Daily Mail, well, they took their numbers that they believe are what is about to happen and they took them to H&R Block, just like many Australians would. They'd go to an accountant to try to double-check what's going to happen here. Now, all you need to worry about is the right-hand side of this picture, where, under these changes, if you earn $18,200, well, of course, you don't pay tax now. If you earn $19,000, you'll get $152 back, and by that we mean annual, okay? $932 for $45,000 annual. $60,000 is $1,300 annual. $80,000 is $1,800, $120 is $2,800, $135 is $3,800, and $190 and above is a little more than $4,500. But you see, all of us don't have bills to pay that are annual. Our bills are daily, but most likely they are weekly. They are weekly bills that we pay when we go to the supermarket, weekly bills when we fill up our car. So let's have a look at all of this talk, at all of the sliding doors moment of everything that we've been set up for. And I'm going to tell you right now how much you are going to get each week. And ask yourself, does any of this really even begin to touch the sides of how out of pocket you are? Now remember, those numbers that I just said annually, okay, that I just read to you, for $19,000, $45,000, $60,000 and $80,000, remember all of those people got taken away $1,500. They're not getting that back at 19. They're not getting that back at 45. They're not getting that back at 60. So the government is still keeping the money they took off you in July of last year. They can afford to be generous because they've already taken it off you. Madness. Anyway, if you earn $19,000, the grand total of this change, of this focus on low and middle income workers, is $12.64 a week. That's it. Think of all those words the Prime Minister has said, $12.67. If you earn $45,000, it's $17.92 a week. Now, in the same way that the people who tried to destroy the Stage 3 tax cuts were able to talk about the cost to the budget and over 10 years and it was $350 billion because it was everyone's tax cut times 10. Well, guess what? You can do exactly the same thing with the press releases that are coming out right now, which is to divide it and find out how much you get a week. Because the reality is that you are, at the end of the day, paying tax weekly, fortnightly, monthly, however you get paid. But in terms of your bills and your ability to pay them, if you earn $60,000, you're getting $25 a week back of your own money. $80,000, $34. $120,000, $53. Petrol has gone up by this margin, let alone everything else. $135,000 is $74 a week, and $190,000 is going to end up at $89. So if you're somebody, let's just say, and Australians are basically sitting somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000. So let's say somewhere between $25 and $35 a week is all of this bluster and BS is actually going to produce for you. Between $25 and $35 a week. Well, according to the inflation data that came out at the start of this year, electricity is up 10% on where it was last year. That's not going to touch the sides. $25 to $35 won't help you with gas or insurance or bread and cereal or your rent or your food products or your housing or your dairy. Because all of those things have already been eaten up. And remember, you could have had $1,500 extra before this exercise started. And then if they kept that $1,500 and delivered the tax cut, well then yes, you would be a little further in front. But they took the $1,500 And the best you're going to get back for the bulk of Australians is between $25 and $35 a week. That's it. Oh, but it's a sliding doors moment for the Prime Minister. Normal people will think that there's a gold bar of gold bullion being sent to them in the mail based off some of the garbage that they have been reading, seeing and hearing. Because the play of the people around the Prime Minister is that you're too stupid to notice your own finances. But guess what, Prime Minister? For those people who watch every single cent, a few more cents is helpful. Sure, no question. But it doesn't change their world when for most Australians it's between $25 and $35, which wouldn't even be enough money to take the family to the movies once. But you see, because all of the people in Treasury sit around and say it's hundreds of billions of dollars because it's everyone's tax cuts over 10 years, what a generous offer this is. The reality is for normal people, it's 4/5 of bugger all. But think about the costs as well, about these low and middle income earners and the working families in the middle of Australia, and that's what we care about here. What about the people that are sending their kids back to school? It's just happened in Queensland, about to happen in most of the rest of the country in the next couple of weeks. Well, according to a whole bunch of surveys, you pick them, but basically it'll cost $512 to send your kid back to school this year. Uniform, textbooks, bag, water bottle, bit of technology, maybe some new stationery. The government is giving you $25 to $35 back via this tax cut for the week that you will go to a shop to make those payments. And let alone the people that are trying to pay off a house. Now, remember, after the Albo dozen of interest rate rises, the people that are trying to pay off a loan in Australia, if it's $500,000, you've had to find an extra $14,500 with interest rates where they currently are and the expectation they're going to stay there for a while. ANZ Bank says it could be as long as a couple of years. People on $750K, an extra $21,000 they've had to find, $1 million for $29,000. So my simple point is this. They want a pat on the back for $25 to $35 a week. Now, the easy pushback against that is, well, how would he know? That's going to be a massive difference to people. Don't patronise people by pretending that they're now in the money because they're $25 better off a week. Don't patronise Australians by telling them the world got better and it's yellow brick roads from here because they got $35 a week extra. Now, my rage and anger does not come because the people who have been working very hard and are lucky enough to be being paid well and not getting the full tax cut that they should be getting. Although that is, of course, what I believe, because as I've told you, 11% of the country pays 55% of more than what? $300 billion worth of income tax that happens each and every year. My aggro tonight is that the Prime Minister makes all this noise and all this fuss and calls all the MPs back to Canberra to rubber stamp a decision that had already been taken by Cabinet and had already been leaked to the newspapers. Must feel great to be a backbencher from Western Australia who had to fly over for a, 1-hour meeting so you could be the human meat puppets for the Prime Minister's non-press conference today because the cameras weren't allowed to ask questions. They were just there to film for the story. And the government got exactly what it wanted, which was the spin from the media that the government is helping you. The government is trying to help itself. My bet is that the people who sweat on every single dollar will notice that $25 to $35 is not winning lotto.